Okay. Is everyone here? Oh, everyone's already here. I see they're all coming in. We've been talking over that. Okay, well, welcome everyone. It is 12 o'clock and we're about to jump into our panel on pixels and prompts. My name is Ben McAvoy. A lot of you guys have met me or heard me talk in the past, for which I'm either sorry or welcome back. We have a really interesting panel today on a topic that I know is quite top of mind for a lot of people in the industry. I have given talks on this myself a number of times and hosted a number of panels, but quite excited about today's panel specifically because we're not going to be retreading a lot of the same territory. In fact, we're going to be talking with two studio owners here in Toronto, one from animation, one from the visual effects world, about actual implementations of how artificial intelligence technologies, so models and platforms, have been integrated into production and actually built from the ground up in most cases and used. So for those of you who are joining, I just want to level set expectations here that we will not be waxing philosophical today about the ups and downs of AI in an abstraction, but actually talking about the implementation and insights that two studios have already started to find in the industry in today's day and age. Before we get started, just a bit of housekeeping. For those of you who are joining, we will have Q&A at the end. We're expecting this to run about an hour long. You'll see there's a Q&A section in the chat in the webinar today. So you're more welcome to add questions as they arise, and we'll try to capture them either in the flow or at the end. So I do encourage you guys to add your thoughts there when you can. Also with the chat, which of course is always welcome for anyone to throw ideas out and just say hi. And without further ado, and also as a reminder, this is being recorded. So for anyone who's curious, we'll be available afterwards. So I'm gonna actually jump right into introducing our two panelists today. Our first panelist is Jonathan Brothman from Monsters, Aliens, Robots, and Zombies. We're zombies, no and. So we're learning punctuation matters here. Jonathan, if you don't mind, just for those who don't know who you are, quick introduction, and I can queue up your demo.
Yeah, Jonathan Brothman, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Monsters, Aliens, Robots, Zombies. We are a visual effects studio and technology company based in Toronto. Great,
and just give me 1 second as I start to navigate too many screens at once so I can get, oh my God, this is gonna make me insane.
So Ben, I'll filibuster for you. So what Ben's about to show you is our two products, Vanity and LipDub. You'll see how the platforms are used, how they're operated, and also the specific use cases that we're going after.
Thank you. Okay, I will put up Vanity to start. Okay. Oh, and chat is disabled. I'm going to ask Anne, just while you're on the call here, if you can set that up as we queue this up. Hopefully there's audio.
There's no audio, Ben.
This is where having, 1 second, folks.
Why don't you play the second one, Ben, and I can speak over the lip.
Yeah, you can speak over that one.
Yeah.
A technical test probably would have been a smart choice here. Sorry, folks. All right, share screen. Sharing that.
Okay, so what you guys are about to see is, let's see, is the audio work? No, that's okay. So this is our LipDub platform. It's a lip syncing technology at Hollywood standards. It's fully automated lip sync technology. This is how the platform works. I've never done this before, so this is a good test. You sign on, this is the actual interface. You set up your project, you name the project, you select the languages that you want to convert into. Now the software is language agnostic, so you can go in and out of any language. Once you've set up the project, you are now setting up your scene. So you can take full scenes from your project, you upload them into the software, and it starts pre-processing. So it starts training on the scene. It identifies the speaking actors automatically within the scene. For workflow management, you're going to name each actor that is speaking in the scene. It helps with the audio component. So that's why it's important to stay organized in your workflow. It'll show you a group of phases at the bottom that it's detected. So that, that guy on the left, those are different images from him in the scene. If the system makes a mistake, you can easily go into the interface and just say, hey, no, oh, sorry, that guy is actually not the guy that we thought it is. AI is very good, but it's never perfect. And so we do allow for a manual correction with respect to the identities. Once you've identified your characters, you take your dialogue stem per character. So you have the guy, you upload their dialogue stem. You have the girl, you upload her dialogue stem. And you click go. And that is the process. And once you've done all of those steps, it will spit out a preview of the image that you can view on the actual application. And if you're satisfied with the output, you click download and you get your 4K AI-enabled moving image. And that is what LipDub is. That's my first time doing it. How did I do, guys?
That was perfect.
I actually think it's just, I could have recorded that for you and update the audio. I'm trying to like desperately search for how to fix audio on here because of course I'm a Zoom idiot. So I will queue up Vanity, and I think you're gonna have to do another soft shoe over top of that, Jonathan, as I try and sort through this. And is it possible for us to also share these demos after the fact?
These are
open?
Yeah, these demos, you can reach out to us directly to.
Yeah, great. Okay. All right, you can talk about Vanity.
Yeah, this one's quite a bit shorter. So you can just go from here, Ben. Vanity is a 2D cosmetic solution. So we can execute shots that would typically take a half a day to 2 days in 20 minutes. So that's an example where we de-age Josh Jackson in Dr. Death. That's what the interface looks like. So you saw the mask. You create the mask, you're using toggles to affect the different regions of the face. So, there's blend strength, edit strength, texture strength. You're bringing back texture, you're bringing, you're dialing up wrinkles, you're softening the wrinkles, but still maintaining the texture. And yeah, it's a beautification tool. It can do beauty work, it can age, it can de-age. We took the acne out of the kids in Stranger Things last season. You saw we de-aged Josh Jackson. We aged the guy who played Mike Tyson in the Mike Tyson biopic or the mini series. So yeah, we've used this on over 50 Hollywood productions. And last thing I'll say is, especially in a moment like today, where I think we could all appreciate that the industry, it's quite difficult and there's a lot of price uncertainty and figuring out where the next job is going to come from. Vanity's been great because it is a true piece of differentiation, which I'll speak to a little bit later, that allows us to be unique and provide a unique offering in the market, and therefore we can remain competitive.
It's fantastic. I'm already seeing some Q&A come in. So I'm just going to flip over. Thank you, Jonathan. Aran, unfortunately, you're not going to have audio here, which I know is somewhat important for your piece. So my apologies. Again, hopefully this is something you guys can make available afterwards. But I will share, maybe you can do the same thing because yours is a bit longer as well.
Sorry, yeah, so before you run it, I'm just gonna, before you run it, I'm gonna run a quick intro.
Introduce yourself as well. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm the co-founder of Snowball Studios. We operate mainly on the animation industry. We're the studio behind Muppet Babies, Fancy Nancy, Bat Wheels, and those are mainly preschool shows. We have our main hub is here in Toronto, and we have another hub in Israel. Both hubs are running on the same pipeline, and obviously the need for efficiencies and to continuously upgrade the quality and allow for more tools to the creators and the animators this is what drove us to create Pixie Dust. So you want to try and run it?
I can, and I've realized the share sound option is grayed out. So unfortunately, there's no sound for any of them, but we'll play it anyway. So you can walk us through what you're seeing.
Okay, so I don't think that I'm going to do a great job similar to Jonathan. Jonathan do, but fortunately enough, there is some subtitles, so I don't need to do that. But this is one of the tools that we've created using Pixie Dust. So Pixie Dust is an internal tool that we're using. It was already used on productions and on projects. So this is completely ready, production ready. There are different usages and there are different technologies, and just trying to wrap up things. But in this case, basically this is text to animation. So basically once we have the characters, you can just feed the text and all the gestures and the movements, including backgrounds, camera changes, everything is being done with the pixie dust technology.
I'm going to ask questions while we're watching over this, just because I did
course.
actually have some of my own. Is the text also text to speech, or is it just text to video and this is recorded video?
Yes. So the way that the process works is the text is actually generating the speech. We can work very similar to Jonathan that can create different languages. So each one of those languages actually create a different animation, a different style, because Israelis and Italians speaks a lot with their hands. North Americans a little less. So it can generate, and again, it suggests a preliminary animation that is more customized to the territory that you wanna distribute. So for example, if you're looking into ancillary content, you're looking for like snippets of 1 minute, 2 minute shorts, the ones that you would like to address in Israel or in Italy or in Japan or in Canada will be completely different.
Interesting. So the performance changes as well, not just
the performance changes.
lips.
So basically, the text generates the voice. The voice now we have multiple options. We can either use the automatically generated voice, or we can use a pre-existing voice, or we can sample a certain actor, of course, with the royalties and the approvals in place, and then just use exactly his or her tone. And that this is what drives later on the animation. So the system is running in parallel in 2 levels. One, it generates the sound, and the system understands the sound and how to perform. And the second thing, it goes to the text and reanalyzes the text and enhance the performance.
Okay, so as someone who's been playing around in this space myself for well over a year, as I imagine a lot of people in this chat might even be, it's really impressive to see both, all 3 of these platforms in the state they are. These aren't, really nasty looking backends where you're still kind of using some sort of bizarre AI. They look very well formed. I'm sure they're still kind of V0.1 or whatever they are. Maybe they are version 1.0s, but I'm curious for you guys how, I'm going to ask you questions that aren't in the outline, but I want to actually dig in a little bit before we go to the outline itself. Jonathan, Vanity has been out for a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4 years. Am I getting those numbers about right? And Lipped Up in and around the same. So it's kind of, these are pre, oh my God, ChatGPT, everything. What drove the thinking for you guys back when you developed this before the boom really kind of became apparent?
Yeah, so Vanity, yes, on the amount of time it's been in the market. Lipped Up, we brought into the market in summer 2023. We were offering it as a service, but now our platform is ready as a beta launch, and we launched that in late January. Why did we develop these? Because when I started in visual effects in late 2016, early 2017 with my partner Lon Molnar, it was apparent to me that the industry is very homogenous, and it lacks differentiation. And you're going to hear me keep coming back to that word, but I came in, I'm like, well, everyone's using the same tech stack. So like everyone uses Nuke, everyone's using like Maya Houdini. It's like, and everyone's artists are, we all share artists. It's like, I have artists that worked at Weta has artists that worked at Mars. So what is really the difference between all of our companies? And the answer is like, nothing really. Like a size, maybe, money, financing. So it wasn't good enough. And I also didn't feel like we want to compete on quality. Quality to me is like nebulous, and it's in the eye of the beholder. It's table stakes. Like if you don't have good quality, you're not at the table. Time and cost are quantifiable matrices to compete on. And so we were like, what can we do to like compete on those time and cost? And conceptually, AI was one of those pieces of technology, and that's how we began our journey.
That's great. I mean, the foresight there is quite interesting, and we could probably go deeper into just the backstory, but not a nominal investment for you guys, I have to imagine. Don't have to obviously share numbers, but how long from ideation to at least like your first performance, like this is usable?
Yeah. Like Lipped Up, we've been developing now for about 3 years. Vanity, we started Vanity really like halfway through 2019. But yeah, it's, it costs money. You got to get cash positive, and it's hard, right? And so how do you find that balance between continuing to push trying to free up resources, not constraining your resources tremendously, but also being responsible in your pursuit. Because like Aran and I were talking earlier, it's like, it's not like building a pipeline, right? It's like, you know what the outcome of the pipeline is. And theoretically, like there are steps to getting there. AI, it's, you know, I asked the researchers, I'm like, when's this task gonna be done? And they're like, you know, they give me windows, but it's research, it's bleeding edge stuff. They don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, to echo Jonathan, you know, the R&D component here, the R component is significantly larger than the D component. So it's a research, and you know, on the coming from the finance and timeline side, it's really frustrating because, you know, you more or less, you want to create efficiency. You want to allow the artist to create better visual. You want to allow for the same given time frame. You want to allow for more iterations to get the vision out there in the best way possible, and not in the old traditional way that doesn't allow for many changes, etc., etc. So you know where you want to get to, but it's not like, okay, now I'm taking my pipeline, my CG pipeline to pipeline 2.0. It's a lot of research, a lot of frustration. Well, that was a dead end. Now we need to approach it from a completely different angle.
I know that just last thing, because Aran and I knew we were just going to pile on each other here for the entire talk, but it's 100% agreed with Aran. Last point I'll make is, what makes a great research team is the team that shortens the failure cycles and are able to iterate quickly. So quickly realizing that you've gone down a road that won't bear fruit, figuring it out, cutting it off. Failure is not a bad thing. Failure is a good thing, as long as you can identify failure very quickly.
Yeah.
And there's a whole panel just on talking about building, and I'm just going to put a pin in the conversation, because I know in our pre-chat we've talked about there is a conversation to be had around, is it feasible for everyone to go off and build their own tool? Actually, you know what? Let's just talk about it here. You know, the idea of feasibility, building a tool versus actually leveraging tools. Looks like, Jonathan, you guys are making some of these tools, you know, platforms that can be bought into and used as not just a service internally, but actually, you know, maybe a software as a service. I'm not sure, Ran, if you guys have a similar kind of trajectory in terms of what you're going to do with Pixie, but what are your thoughts here around, like, the looking back even in the rear view around investing and building versus leveraging and you know, accessing tools that are already being built around you? And that's a jump ball, either of you guys.
Go for it.
So we are using existing ones. We have aggregators on things, and we degenerate our own proprietary technology. Now, like we talked earlier, you know, you need to do everything in a very, you need to be very cautious. So you're not rolling into a production when you don't know when it ends. You don't start experimenting. Then obviously every time that we're doing any R&D or we're implementing any technology, we're sandboxing it first, and we're making sure that everything is working. And at the first, we're actually producing it twice. So, you know, reiterating to what you were saying about the cost of the R&D, everything that we're implementing, we're doing it in the existing way that we're 100% certain. And in parallel, we're also doing developing the new tools, and we're seeing whether that creates like a better output. So this is at least the way that we're approaching things. Jonathan, from your end?
Yeah, I'm just making a note here because you're always making me think more as we talk here. But I think I talk about this a lot. Like, I believe, and you know, obviously it's a company I'm a part of, and I've pushed very hard in the last few years, but I believe Mars is the best place to develop generative AI technology for visual effects, because we do this every day. We live and we breathe this stuff. And so one of the things we were able to do is we're able to bring imperfect technology to the market. And Ben, to your question, like, well, are we going to offer it as a service, or are we going to offer it as a platform? No, we want to offer these things as a platform, but we can offer it as a service early days when the technology is imperfect. We say we eat our own dog food, right? So we're using it ourselves, stress testing it, debugging it, exploring different research considerations. And so we're like, Vanity is a great example. We're really able to monetize it. It's not a platform yet, but we are able to monetize it because we're using it internally with our own artists. And you get into like this flywheel where it's like, we're pretty much getting paid to make our technology better at this point. And then on the LipDub component, LipDub is a platform. We do service it. You know, we provide that white glove service, and some of the challenges for LipDub are very, very difficult. And so it's sometimes easier for us to just bring the work in-house and for us to really facilitate it because we have different, unreleased code and different levers we can pull internally that external platform users can't use. But the thing about LipDub is like, if LipDub's the left hand, which is the image part, like the right hand is audio. So, to your broader question, Ben, is like we are developing, but similar to Iran, we're also integrating other technologies into our workflows because we need to, because the image doesn't work without audio.
Sorry.
Last thing, these challenges are so difficult to like the general theme to develop. Like our guys are graphics guys. Like our researchers are specifically like AI graphics research. There's other people, A, that are better at audio in general in the research community, but B, they're way further ahead of us. So it's like I'm not gonna start when these guys are like 50 yards down the field.
Right, which makes me think of platforms like I know 11 Labs is not necessarily de facto industry standards, but it's like they're pumping money into audio, text to speech, and speech to speech, and all these other kinds of technologies. Why wouldn't you just integrate where necessary and build where there's gaps or there's a specific need no one's served? Sorry, Ran.
Sorry?
I was talking over you, sorry.
No, all good, all good. I was just saying, at the end of the day, it's the DNA of the studio. Now, like from the time that I know Jonathan, I believe that the studios share a fairly similar DNA, which like we continuously pushing for the next level of things. Now, it's not just on the technology side; it's also on the how you manage a show, how you communicate with a client. So yes, you have your own templates and production systems, but you need to strive to continuously change things, right? Because you no longer can manage a show with a pen and paper, right? Producers that doesn't know how to use production management systems like ShotGrid and such. It's very hard to manage the complexity of the shows that require the today's world require. So it's the same thing. It's either you have that in the DNA and you understand that you need to continuously move forward and advance, not by eliminating yesterday. It's like by just seeing how you can do more and how you can do better. There is sort of a saying that this is the mantra of like that's the DNA of that we have in the studio ever since we started leveraging that AI, which is AI will not replace doctors. Doctors using AI will replace doctors that are not using AI. And that's the mindset that we're going. At the end of the day, skilled artists, knowledge, trust, all of those either coming from artists or coming from studios, that will not go away. Creativity, all of those needs to stay. On top of that, now we need to see how we're using those tools.
You've covered like 3 of my different topics in that answer.
Sorry, we can go back. Okay, I didn't answer it.
This is great. It's like, where do I go? I'm going to do something a little bit different than what I said at the beginning, which is there's some questions I want to ask. Actually, I'm going to consolidate most of the questions that are coming through the QA. And then I'd like to talk a bit more about some of the themes that arise from the work you guys have been doing. So first and foremost, I'm going to combine Jason and Ashley's together a little bit around, actually, I'm going to start with Mike and John. And there's a reason. As much as you guys want to reveal here, because of course this is proprietary to your studio, Mike is asking about if you guys have dedicated hardware for AI, is it shared at the studio? So basically like the technical infrastructure, how you guys are supporting that. And on top of that, Jonathan's asking about model training. So again, you guys tell us what you want, keep the rest hidden where you need to. But just in terms of like the build itself, are you guys leveraging open source models? Are you guys doing everything completely proprietary in-house? And have you been integrating in terms of like, do you have to create dedicated hardware, not just dedicated teams? What does that, maybe give us a bit of a picture of what that looks like for you now.
Jonathan, you want to start or?
Sure. Yeah, well, one of the things that was sort of serendipitous for us, you kind of fall ass backwards into some of these good decisions, or it happens, is we always rendered our 3D visual effects on GPU. And everyone knows now that GPU is what runs AI. So we are actually starting to build our GPU farm before we were even pursuing AI. And it was just serendipitous that AI is there. I know a lot of companies can render on CPU for 3D. Like we're a Redshift company. We've always been a Redshift company. So yeah, we have, very robust GPU infrastructure at Mars. We have lots, hundreds of GPUs. At the same time, you know, if you want to penetrate at scale, you can't render locally. You have to go to the cloud. So we do a lot of our rendering locally as much as we can because we have the equipment. We might as well use it. But ultimately, for LiftDub specifically, LiftDub at scale, that's cloud compute. So when you're on the app, it's cloud compute. And then there's going to be a huge issue with GPUs. Like in short, like there is not enough GPU in the world to cover the compute that is already required and will be required. Hence, you see NVIDIA's stock flying through the roof.
So as for the first part, everything is in-house, everything is proprietary. So there is no, when we're taking a project, we're not using anyone else's animation. We're not training our system based on anything that exists out there. Simply because we can't. You can't have now someone coming to Disney or Mattel and suing them for taking any animation cycles or whatnot. So everything is being trained in-house. There are some tools that are open that are licensed that we're using. As for the hardware, I 100% agree with Jonathan. We're using the Unreal. But yeah, it's GPU heavy on everything, and everything needs to be rendered at the end of the day in the cloud. So it's a lot less expensive metal that after 5 years you paint it in blue and throw it into the ocean. A lot less going to the cloud, which is again metal, but at least someone else is holding it and not us.
Not your metal.
I would add
Distributed
too,
metal.
just because I didn't hit that part, but yeah, all of our stuff's proprietary. All of our models, our training models are proprietary. Like we own that stuff. You have to, or you're going to get nailed.
Which is a nice segue into the question that Ashley, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, was asking around. There's two questions. I'm going to start with the second half, but really I want to focus on the first half, which is around copyright. And it sounds like you guys have basically determined with due diligence you're doing around how to train the model so that it's ownable and transferable. When we talk about the idea of like, you can't own generative AI copyright, that's when you're using platforms like Midjourney trained on public data, but your own private data, you guys are fine because this is your model. And I'm just going to assume everything is sorted out on that front. But then the bigger question becomes talking to and onboarding clients with this concept. I'm sure when I see something like Vanity or LiftDub, even Pixie, that's a sales pitch, right? You're saying, hey, we can do this. Here's the quality. And a client says yes, then they're on board. But I'm curious about when you're working with any of your production clients or service clients, sorry, like, have you had a lot of challenges? Have you had a lot of questions that arise? Like, what's the process like in terms of introducing people to the idea of using some of these tools in the pipeline on a project that you might be bidding? So
it's I'm just taking note, and I'm terrible at multitasking. First of all, the way that we train, it's not a big secret. Like the way that we train our models, we have a motion capture studio in Israel, and there's a team of animators. So the origin of once we're building the character, now we go to the motion capture, and we're recording days and days of enormous data, because you will not laugh the way, well, Ben, you will laugh like Optimus Prime, but I will laugh a bit differently. Or we're not moving like Barbie. So each one of those characters will get its own DNA and its own performance. As for the challenges, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of concern out there from our partners and clients about what can be done. And I think that the most common mistake is asking what does the technology can do. That's not the question. You continue creating whatever you want to do. You have an idea, you have a vision in your head, you need to generate it. If it can be done with the help of technology, then we're using technology. You can't use technology, then you're not using technology. It's that simple. Now, obviously, the technology has its limitations. We can't have them. Ours is a dialogue base. So, if you need a bunch of superheroes to fly in space and fight and shoot some stuff from wherever, this is traditional key animation. So basically what created is a hybrid pipeline, which can take input from three sources: the keyframe, the motion capture, and the pixie dust. One of the things that we analyzed when we were building the system is Muppet Babies. We did 3 seasons of Muppet Babies, 3.5 seasons of Muppet Babies. And what we've learned by analyzing the data is that about 43% of the shots were shots that were compatible with pixie dust. Now, it doesn't mean that we can do it for 43% less of the time, or we can do it 43% cheaper. It does mean that we can allow for higher quality. It does mean that we can do it slightly cheaper, and it does mean that we can do it slightly faster. But by default, it says that now we can actually execute the vision of the creator at a higher level. But it's not that, we still need to get the traditional keyframe pipeline there, and wherever we chose to use motion capture, we've been using those. So yes, the challenge is about educating people, is about getting over this concern. And I'll just finish, we've been talking about that, Jonathan. I think that there are 3 tiers of challenges. The first tier is the government side. The government, right, they're very afraid of all that tech that will take people's job, et cetera, et cetera. So there is zero support in that. The second tier is actually about, the funding and the programs and the development, about assisting new studios and individual people that have some great ideas to bring them to life, on certain components of the production. And the third tier is about the natural concern that people has. Now, by default, the most important people in the productions are the managers and the supervisors, the people that brings the experience, and then they can educate and guide the production. And those are usually the people that have been using things in a certain way for a long time. So sometimes it's harder for those people to adjust and to fully comprehend the possibilities here. So at least on our end, those were the challenges that we've encountered.
So again, I'm pretty fundamentally aligned with Iran on this. And just to hit his 3 tiers and to extrapolate in my own way, government policy is a huge issue in Canada. I don't know what's wrong with our Fed government, but the way that they stifle innovation in this country is remarkable, especially given Canada is like AI was invented at the University of Toronto. Like we were talking about this earlier. It's like, yeah, sure, we're a global player now, but government policy is a huge, huge issue. Funding in Canada is a huge, huge issue. We talk about this all the time. Like when you go out to Canadian VCs, all they want to do is think of a reason to say no. When you go out to an American VC, all they want to do is think of a reason to say yes. And what happens after that is the Americans start to acquire the best IP coming out of Canada. And then eventually when those companies get big enough, they just get pulled into the States. So then everyone's gone from Canada. And all the benefit we have is being pioneers in AI, being leaders. Like some of the best AI minds, like obviously came out of Jeffrey Hinton's lab at the University of Toronto at all the biggest companies in the world. This guy's like genius, and all of his students are amazing. They're global leaders in the space. But then you also have the University of Waterloo, just down the road from Toronto. The government is crippling AI initiatives in Canada, and even the good ones get pulled out because the funding is so disruptive.
I'm going to use this as a way to spin.
Also, just lastly, on our tech, your earlier question, Rand pulled me into things I'm very passionate about. Our pitch is pretty simple. So when you go to someone, you're like, give me foreign dialogue and I could make the lips change. Or you're like, hey, I can beautify your character at 4K Hollywood standard past QC at a time that's way faster than you could ever get anywhere else, even in India, and a price that's way more affordable than you could get anywhere else, even in India. It's pretty compelling. The next question is always like, okay, prove it, right? And every single time we sell this stuff, it's the same conversation. It's like, hey guys, this is what we do. This is how much we cost. And they're always like, oh, that sounds great. In theory, can we do a test? And then we say yes. And then we do the test. And then they're like, ooh, that looks, it does what you said it can do. And then we get the show.
There's so many ways I want to go on this. I want to just step back for 1 second because you brought up, and this is the outline I'm working with here, the nature of the global competitiveness. Jonathan, when you're talking about stifled research and the aspects of, I think, where we want to see growth, but we're not. My interpretation of that largely is around the idea of research and development for tools and platforms. Maybe I'm being a little bit too simplistic there, but also, is there, I guess the question I'm trying to get to is, do we see AI tools in the production pipeline being an important lever when we're thinking about global competitiveness? Over the past 20 years, we've seen a lot of offshoring of services. We're talking about India. I'm sure there's, whole parts of Southeast Asia where we're looking at and going, they'll do it cheaper, faster. Better is probably the dimension that's probably where they fall short. But when they start having access to their own tools, how much better does the quality get from them? And then how does AI become a strategic lever? And how do we incorporate it? How does studios start thinking about incorporating it? Or what are the things that we need to get past if it's funding for new development? What are the things that make AI into the strategic lever it needs to be? I don't know if that's a good question. I'm just
let me see. I'll try to hit it.
Parse me.
The way, like, my immediate response to that is, again, something we spoke about earlier, is Canada is slow to adopt. I don't know what our problem is, but we just everywhere across all innovative areas, research technologies, we're slow. And I was at a forum like a month ago, and I was talking a lot about this. Is it because we're complacent? Is it because we've come from a place of privilege where we don't feel like we need to like push the boundaries? But it's a really big problem that we have up here. And so, like, I encourage everyone on this call to say, you don't have to go develop your own stuff, but you better start to adopt it, because if you don't start to adopt it, there's, it's 1.4 billion people in India, as an example. Someone there is going to adopt it. Someone there is going to figure it out. You can't, we as Canadians cannot sit around thinking that, oh, this technology is not going to be able to do that. Whatever people are saying the technology is going to be able to do, I'm not a researcher, but it's going to happen, right? So it's like, these things are going to happen. You can't be ignorant to it, and you can't ignore it. And Canadians have a really big problem with that. And then you go to some of these other countries that might not be where we are today, but boy, are they early adopters, and boy, are they bullish on pushing the boundaries. And those are the people I'd put my money behind.
Yeah,
I used to. Sorry, Ren, just to build really quickly, because a good example, just to paint a picture, and you and I talked about this, Jonathan, that point to a technology in the past 100 years that was great and transformative, probably subjective, transformative to this level that wasn't adopted. I used to live in India, and it was all of Southeast Asia. You saw mobile infrastructure that was way beyond what anything we'd had here, because they leapfrogged over landlines and wired services. So I think you're seeing the same thing here. There's no existing infrastructure for some of these pieces. The new tools are going to fill that void quickly, and they'll be adopted that much faster.
I see it as a huge opportunity for the Canadian studio, because, and I'm differentiating between two things. One is creating an original IP, and the second one is servicing and execution. Today, especially with the online platforms and all the social platforms, now we have the opportunity to own our content, and not to rely on other distributors or broadcasters or streamers. We can work in parallel. And think about YouTube, or and I will speak about the animation, because this is the field that I'm coming from. Look at TikTok or YouTube, the biggest content platforms, online platforms. You don't see any animation there. The only animation that you'll see there was something that was either pre-produced, pre-generated, or that was edited and cut into slices. There is no animation that can address real-time events, educating kids about different topics. I mean, think about a daily edition about yesterday NBA or hockey games, or even addressing, there will be election coming up next year, like educating about each party's agendas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of those, now you can make them access either to an older audience that, that will respond better to animation, to a way that is being pitched in animation, or a certain way, or to kids. So there is a huge opportunity here. Now, at the end of the day, Canada is probably the leading country when it comes to content, in terms of generating content in here. There is a reason why the American shows are being produced here. It's not just the tax incentive. This is where the knowledge is. This is where the workforce is. There is a reason why so many people, including myself, are coming to Canada to generate content in here. It's a great place. Now, this AI technology can help us actually eliminate the gap that we had from low-cost countries, because those were one of the things that drove us into that is that we weren't able to compete on younger audience productions because the cost of it was so ridiculous that we couldn't afford, right? Like, the salaries here is not the same, the overheads here is not the same. So by doing that, now that allowed us to, I don't want to name any shows, but you go to our website and you see that now we're able to generate shows that back in the past it was producing those in Canada was next to impossible. So there's a huge opportunity. It's all about how fast we adopt, whether we want to take the lead or whether we want to be responsive, active versus being proactive to things and taking the lead, rather than continue chasing.
I want to just make like the case and just drill like triple down on this point because I think it's important. Like somebody in this room, tell me a moment in the history of humanity where there's been an exponential piece of technology that's been stopped. And we're not talking about like small, like incremental benefits, like orders of magnitude, like multiples better than current state. It's never going to happen. This thing will not be stopped. It is inevitable. And then the other thing, like I always like to say is, remember when the internet came, and like I always liken AI to the internet. Like that's the impact on the world this thing's gonna have at a minimum. Is remember when like you used to send these notes, like you used to email someone and you're like, I got a web mail, or I got like an internet mail, or used to tag internet to the back of like anything you were doing on the internet. That's what people are doing with AI right now. I'm telling you, in a few years, they're not going to be doing that. It's not going to be like LiftUp AI. It's just like LiftUp. It's just like, and I've always wanted it to be called LiftUp, but there's other people I work with that have different opinions. But like qualifying everything as AI, that's happening today. But that tag is going to go away because it's like everything's going to be AI.
I'm going to use this as a bit of a jump off to Karen's question, which kind of leads into there's a public sentiment around AI, and it kind of seems to swing pretty hard pendulum, one way or the other, pro and anti. I'm part of many subreddits that have a lot of vitriol around why yes, why no. And I think a lot of it comes down to, the idea of what we call AI versus tools that are, there's generative tools that are also in that context, but maybe are not quite as broad ranging. Maybe people think of things like ChatGPT, the Journeys, the Soras, and go AI versus seeing it as like a process or an approach to thinking about solving problems using neural networks, using models, things like this that are far more sophisticated. But Karen's point is quite interesting. The strikes last year, where we're talking about AI when it comes to SAG-AFTRA, when it comes to the writer's strikes, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of pushback. In fact, there was a study that shows there's a lot of people used to have this on hand, but I've forgotten it. But it was well over half of Americans surveyed were nervous, if not worried, about AI. And so it's like you're dealing with advances that are going to be quite beneficial, but then you're also dealing with people who are probably pushing back on it, and even studios who are saying, we're not going to use AI. We're not going to allow for AI in our processes, which again is a very broad, maybe unnecessary blanket. How do you guys view that? Like, is there something in there that you feel is going to be one of these external forces that may stop progress? Is something you have to navigate? How's that? Do you guys even think about this?
Who's first?
I think that there is no way of stopping it, but it's not about whether there's a way of stopping it. The question is why? Why stopping the progress, right? Like it's like I will state the obvious. It's like someone coming now and say, hey, let's go back and generate movies with a pen and paper. I mean, everybody when the 3D came out, everybody said, oh, now it will take everyone's jobs, and it only, I don't remember the numbers, but we have 10 times more of the content these days. So I see it as the same. Like I've mentioned, think about the two biggest content platforms. You don't see animation in there. Just think about the potential, now individuals that maybe don't know how to draw anything for their living, but they have like an amazing stories in their head. I don't know. Think about small things. We don't need to think about some big things. Think about just a dad sitting down with his daughter, and now they're doing a project at home, and and the kid is writing a story, and then they're bringing it to life. So think about it in that sense. You don't no longer need to go and pay someone to do all these things. You can do all those things on your own.
So I'm gonna spin. Oh, sorry, Jonathan.
Just to jump in, because I agree with Ran, and I'm going to say this as respectfully as possible, is the studios don't care, right? Like, all they care about is that the work is delivered at the quality level, on budget, on time. And so as long as you're able to hit those marks for them, of which AI gives you a tremendous benefit in being able to do so, they don't care. And then, like, more broadly, there's early adopters, and then there's the rest of everyone else, right? And so actually, in our experience, the studios are like pretty early on this stuff. And then I think there's an appreciation, especially in Hollywood, the way their cage has been rattled over the last year. It's like, well, you better start to be an early adopter, because if you're not, you're going to be with the rest of the people, and that's going to put you behind the 8 ball.
Okay, it's a good spin for me into the next question, which is around, I'm sure there's varying degrees of integration, implementation, adaptation going on in the industry. You guys, using that technology adoption lifecycle, you guys are like right at the front. And there's people who are probably early adopting, we're getting in there. And eventually we're just going to see, to your point, Jonathan, we're not going to call it AI. It's just going to be mass adoption. Everyone's going to be using it. The tool is the tool. Just like we don't call software. I'm curious about, for the people who are maybe just starting to realize they need to get in and are maybe already started, what do you think are immediate steps people start thinking about in terms of how they adapt and adopt? You guys were doing it early on. What are some of the steps that you guys took naturally, or even in hindsight, you have changed in order to start to adapt to this new paradigm of how production is going to be operated, or production is going to be created, integrating those tools, all the rest of it? Like, what's the kind of day one for you guys in your mind, or a recommendation for other studios?
Starting.
Yes, just start and educate yourself. There is so much knowledge out there. Again, this is time consuming, but the knowledge is out there, and just start experimenting. That's the cool thing. You no longer need to finish 4 years of Sheridan or any one of these prestige colleges that we have in Canada. I mean, I'm not saying don't go to college, by no means, because I think that college offers more than that. But I think that you can educate yourself. Now, I don't know if you're asking as a studio, or you're asking as an individual creator, or as a partner, or as a client, but everybody, because it's very simple. It's not that complicated. There are tools for everyone to use. It doesn't matter whether this is Pixie Dust or Mars Tools or anyone else. There are free tools and tools that you can pay for. Just go use them, create. Most of the tools will be free at first. So let's start by educating, and then you see the potential, and then you see the options, the possibilities that those tools open. And I think that the first level, and we already see that, like, think about the chatter and the like, when ChatGPT came out, like, the world is still standing, and when it came out, everybody will be fired tomorrow and it will be the end of days. It's not so fast.
Yeah, I agree. Think about what's interesting to you, like, what's your use case, and go find a tool that helps you with it. Like, I was talking to a buddy of mine who's a writer in the WGA, great writer. It's like, he's not even mad about it. He's just like, no, I'm using it. I'm using ChatGPT. I've adopted it into my workflow. So, like, he chose ChatGPT because that's a text prompt. I don't know, if you're a director, you should probably start using like Sora or Runway. Like, just start, go. And then if you have questions, like, there's Reddit forums, right? Like, you could go into any Reddit forum, get trained up. You could learn about the pitfalls, the good, the bad, the otherwise, and yeah, go.
We're focusing on the creative side. I mean, there's so many. Again, I agree with you. There's a new software. It doesn't have. I mean, AI was used, like, there isn't any agile system that haven't used AI for the last, I don't know, decade or so. financial systems are using AI, and all of a sudden, oh, when it hits creative, then everybody goes spooked and scared. There's on the production side, you know, all the dependencies, the milestones and the dependencies of the productions. There are so many great tools. I don't want to mention, like, Unreal is very, it's like everybody knows how they're using AI, but the other huge companies, software companies, they're already, I mean, many of the studios that are participating here, as viewers know, they're using probably their tech team is part of their beta testers. Almost everyone started to implement in the next versions of the softwares AI. I mean, obviously, I can't name anything specific, but that will be part of our life. Just go and use it and educate yourself.
Yeah, dive in. I'm going to shift a little bit to, and Joshua's asked a question that kind of connects to this around skills. Again, I'm going to do a Ben McAvoy special and make this a very long question, but there's a reason. When I think about the net benefits to implementing tools like this, a large part of it comes down to cost and speed. You'll do more faster. In one side, you can look at that and say, great, we don't need as many people. I actually hosted a session about 2 months ago where we talked with a bunch of design agencies who are implementing AI tools, and their attitude was, yes, we can go faster, do this shorter, we don't need people on staff or on projects as long, but it also opens up our opportunity to explore in a way that we couldn't before, because we've always been going faster and cheaper. Now we can go exponentially so, but still maintain a buffer that allows for growth, exploration, the rest of it. So they saw it as raising the ceiling versus lowering the bottom of the floor. But it does then start creating the question around, there are inevitably tools that are coming out that are going to reduce the need for skilled, labor on projects. That's just we saw this with Flash when you go back 20 years, and you didn't need teams of people to do things when you could start working with simple libraries and animate with interpolation versus frame by frame. So same thing will happen. New jobs will come out of this inevitably, but some jobs that are redundant or unnecessary or brute force will disappear. So the question becomes, who do you guys see becoming important in the coming years? An obvious starting point, of course, be people with AI specialties and computer science backgrounds, perhaps, or similar backgrounds. But even from the arts, when you guys start thinking about the future labor force in your productions, especially from the creative side, around, maybe I'll start with you on this, because you talk a lot about the artists and creativity are still critical. How do you start evaluating talent, or how do you start helping upskill and upgrade existing talent to meet the new needs, new paradigms that these tools are going to create? And what are you looking for?
So at the moment, we're looking for exactly the same positions, because at the end of the day, you need to move the characters, you need to figure out the right way of moving them, and there is no replacement to an animator that knows how to move stuff and how to make it look good. So it's the same thing. I see the only difference is that you need to be good at your job. Now, bear in mind, and I think that this is something that people don't think about, there will be more of it. So if now there was a dependency of I don't know, X amount of shows, now there will be a lot more of that. There will be a lot more content. So if I had a crystal ball to know tomorrow, I wouldn't be sitting here. I would have been in the Caribbean probably. So I don't know how tomorrow will look like. I know how to best prepare for that. At the moment, it's exactly the same set of skills. You need to be good at what you do. If you're not good enough, you wouldn't be able to continue working in what you do. And I think that this is a good thing. If you had an animator in your team that wasn't a good animator and was able to, ride along with the team, I don't think that those days will continue. But if you're good, if you're investing the time to educate yourself, to learn from the others, to learn from the more experienced people, they'll definitely going to be work for you.
Again, I 100% fundamentally agree with Iran, and it's like, just be really good at your job. And Hollywood is always going to require this creative bar that's incredibly high, and they'll always require what we always refer to as some control within any technology that they're using, because they're so specific about the aesthetic and the look that they're trying to develop. So it's not like these jobs aren't completely going away, but the people who aren't like the best people are going to have more security than the people who aren't as good. It's just the reality. It's how it's how it works.
So here's a challenging question in that context. If we look at the jobs that are most likely going to, or let's just not say jobs, say the roles, the tasks that are going to be replaced by some of these tools, a large amount of them will be jobs that, or tasks that would have been assigned to juniors, right? So people coming out of college, I'm going to get you to do wire removal. People coming out of college, I'm going to get you to do shop finding, right? Things that are low risk, still necessary. And now you can say, well, I don't need to do the green screen of this. I've got Runway or some other advanced tool. That job is no longer required. Do you envision, or do you see what I'm seeing, which is a gap between graduate level skills? And by the way, I do not want to turn this into a pile on the colleges. You guys know where I am from that standpoint, but a skills gap between graduates who are learning a certain set of skills in the early entry level jobs that often require those people are going to have access to that are no longer going to have those tasks. You're going to look for the best of the best. How do we train that next generation, that next cohort to then also be the best of the best if that opportunity doesn't exist for them? Or how do you guys envision that coming to pass?
You always look for the best of the best. You're looking at the best of the best at the junior level or intermediate or senior. The best, the search or the goal to hiring the best of the best remain the same. And you have early adopters and you have people that are studying faster. Again, it's all a question of perspective. I see it slightly different. I see that now people with less experience, junior, what you call juniors, they have more tools to assist them to produce to generate high quality content instead of them now doing 20 iterations on the same animation scene or the same sequence. And at the end of the day, the director is like, hey, the guy, I'm spending too much time on this kid. Like, I don't want to. So I see it from like on the contrary, you can use these tools to be better. So I don't see that, all right, we're only going to use, remember, there's always a component of salaries, right? You want to have a healthy combination of more experienced people that obviously makes a little bit more money and intermediate and juniors. You would want to still keep that sort of a pyramid of the different levels of experience and knowledge and ability to execute.
I actually love that part of your answer, and something I've never considered before, but could we say that maybe the younger people have an advantage because the older people will have found a certain way of working that fits them, but the younger people will, the
More experience. As an older dude, I want to hear the more experience, not older.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But there's
you know what I
legacy
mean? It's like
processes and habits.
these young people will, as they're developing their workflow and their processes, they'll be forced to integrate these new technologies. And so maybe it's actually an advantage in some ways.
It's an interesting way of looking at it. I can see that. And I guess, at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of work like integrating a new tool and updating pipelines or approaches and processes. It's, as you guys are demonstrating, by the way, I'm doing my summary wrap up here at this point, so we're just running out of time. It's, you guys have spent a lot of time figuring out how to develop your own tools. Those tools look fantastic. I can already see a lot of comments flying back and forth, so I'm sure there's going to be conversations between studios afterwards around implementing some of your tools. But even in the hindsight now, looking over 4 years, how hard it was, but also where places maybe it wasn't as hard as you expected, and seeing the nature, the rapidly changing landscape of how accessible, affordable, useful these tools are becoming, and how that can become super useful for studios in Ontario and Canada to at least remain, if not become even more competitive in a global marketplace, especially when that requirement is becoming so much more critical. But comes with a cost, and that's going to be the willingness to adapt, and take some risks and chances in terms of how you guys go about doing things to get into the mix. Otherwise, you risk being left behind. I'm not sure if I've summarized the entire conversation well, but it seemed to have at least captured a sentiment here, which is the time is now to get involved and to try and figure out how. Jonathan or Ren, maybe, I know we're at 1 o'clock on the nose here, but parting thoughts before we kind of wrap up?
Kind of the same message, right? Like this train will not be stopped. You don't have to innovate yourself. You don't have to develop it yourself, but it will affect us in this industry. It will affect every single part of your life. And so start to let's be the antithesis of what Canada has historically been as with respect to slow adoption. Let's try it a different way. Let's be early to adopt this time.
Nice. Absolutely. Ben, thank you.
Thank you both. This has been an excellent conversation. We're at time, so we'll let everyone get back to their day. Good luck with everything. We look forward to seeing what's going on. I'm sure both of you are available to chat with individuals or participants after the fact if there's interest in talking more about your software. So I'll let people reach out to you as they see fit, and look forward to seeing everyone again soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.